President, I yield the floor and suggest you have some quorum.
Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I took a position that I think some people consider to be unpopular, particularly some of my friends back in the state, that I thought I would come back and explain. And it has to do with the President's executive action. It also has to do with communicating a very important and somber subject. There is a crisis at the border. I've been there. I didn't read about it. I didn't watch it on TV. I didn't hear a tweet or read a tweet about it. I invested time down there. Hours and hours with border security. I was on shallow draft boats. I was on horseback. I've been on ATVs. I've spent a lot of time down on the border. And the one thing I will tell you, the President is absolutely right. There is a crisis on the border. Not only on the southern border, but I will tell you ranchers on the northern border also believe that they have challenges that this President is right to address. I also happen to agree with a good portion of how the President's going to do it after Congress failed to do its job. You have to keep in mind, over the last year, we've had on this floor Democrats and Republicans voting for as much as $25 billion for border security. Democrats and Republicans. And now we're fighting over a fraction of that. And the President needs to act. So he got an appropriation of about $1.5 billion through the negotiated settlement a couple of weeks ago. And now he's taking the only action that he can until Congress acts. And that is to figure out other sources of funding that he believes that he can do within current statutory limits. And the way that he's done that is he's first taken the $1.3 billion that Congress did appropriate. He's got another $2.5 billion and another $600 million that I believe he is right to reprogram, send to the southern border, probably make some investment in the northern border. Here's where I have a respectful difference of opinion with the President and the administration. It's the emergency order that under the Emergency Powers Act, he is using as authority to appropriate the remaining funds. First off, those funds will come from what we call the MILCON budget. That's military construction. So right now, we're trying to find out what that means. What facilities, what projects that we think are critical to help the readiness of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, what investments are we going to make that we've already determined we should make in military construction are going to be put on hold while we reprogram those dollars to go to the southern border. And the real problem that I have is that this is only a fraction of what we all know we need to secure the border. I want to go back to the humanitarian crisis, though. My wife and I had this interesting discussion the other night. She wasn't too happy when I took this position originally. I'm still not sure if she's happy. But to understand why I respectfully disagree with the President, that you have to understand again, as I started this discussion, there is a crisis. There are people dying. There are millions of doses of poison coming across the border every single year that are killing tens of thousands of people. That's a crisis. There are thousands of people crossing the border and dying. They have what they call coyotes, or human traffickers, who will get them across the border, get people who pay thousands of dollars to come across the border, and then say, civilization is just an hour away. It's an hour plane ride away. That just the mere size and scale of Texas, most people don't understand, particularly those crossing the border in the dead of night, working with basically organized crime, that you have to pay a toll to get through the so-called plazas that run the northern border of Mexico. So my problem right now has to do with an executive order that the emergency declaration that the President intends to send to Congress. I am a member, when my wife and I were having this discussion, she said, you just said you agree with the President that there's a crisis on the border. You agree with the President that we need to send resources down to the southern border and work on the northern border. You agree that Congress has failed to act, and you agree that if you were President, you'd do exactly what he's doing. I said, yeah. She said, so why don't you support it? I said, because I'm not the President. I'm a member of the U.S. Senate. I'm a member of a co-equal branch that actually believes that this action falls within our purview. And now we're going to find out, because I'm sure it will be challenged in the courts. But I also worry not so much about this one, because frankly, even the way this money is going to be programmed, I agree with it. What I worry about are future presidents and what they may do if we set this precedent going into the future. We actually have a Democratic candidate running for president. This is one hypothetical, because there have been some far-flung ones that I'm not sure I completely agree with. But let me give you this one. It relates to border security. We have someone who's a member of this body who has publicly said that their priority, if they were elected to be president, is to tear down borders, tear down walls, build bridges, open the borders. Well, if you argue that there's a humanitarian crisis, and I've said that there already is one, then what would prevent that president from issuing an executive order that would divert military construction funding to tear down the walls that are going to be built now? If we give that president, this president, a president I support, a president whose policies and priorities I agree with, that authority, then we could be aiding and abetting a future president and empowering them beyond what I believe their authorities are vested in the Constitution in Article 2. So I've come here today, in part, maybe take another stab at explaining to my wife why I've taken this position, but also to explain to the American people and folks in North Carolina and across this country, I agree with the president. I know that we have a crisis we have to take care of. We have a national security crisis, a homeland security crisis, a humanitarian crisis. It's not the ends. It's a portion of the means. And I applaud the president for taking the action up here and getting things going. I hope over time we can find out a way to fully fund the border strategy on a bipartisan basis and also address other immigration issues that I believe are pressing for this nation. So, Madam President, thank you for allowing me to come before the floor and explain my position. If anybody in North Carolina has any question, I know they know how to get hold of me because my phones are blowing up right now. But I do want to explain it to them in a way that makes sense. I'm a steward of the U.S. Senate. I'm a steward of the Article I branch. That matters to me. Thank you, Madam President.